Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about religious values, ladies and gentlemen. That is a thinker. And luckily, I have Sabeen here who's going to help us think about this in a whole new way. Oh, thank you so much, Sabeen, for coming onto my show, sharing your time and your perspective. Truly honored to have you here. So let's just dive in. When you hear those words, religious values, what does that make you think about?
Ooh, we went right into it. That's a great question. I guess three things come to mind. First would be living honestly and authentically, um, under the guise of like God is always watching, right? And
Mm,
so doing my best to be the type of person that um, would make my values be the leading sort of way that I make decisions. Um, my, so I guess God consciousness would be that first one. Second would be just trusting in God because life is not perfect. Things are going to be difficult. Um, and so trusting God and knowing that I am where I'm supposed to be, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, even if it's hard, even if there's heartbreak. And then I think
mm.
mindfulness is probably the third thing that comes to mind. And just, not taking anything for granted, not having a false sense of control um, from the littlest things, right? Like I can't even control how many times my eyes are going to blink,
Yeah.
right? And so like, thank God that they are blinking, that there is moisture in my eye, that my eyes are functioning, but I didn't make this eyeball. I'm not making it blink, right? So, mindfulness of all the gifts that I have and gratitude towards God for those gifts.
I love that. I love that at all of it, because people really, they don't consider that. You know what I mean? And I think when I think of my relationship with God and my understanding of God, I go exactly where you are, and you having that trust, having that understanding that I don't have control over everything, and the things that I do have control over allow me to be mindful, allow me to be present, allow me to be considerate. You know what I mean? Because I think touching back on what you said is just always knowing that God is watching. Oh my goodness, it really does change the way that you move in life, because you realize that nothing goes unseen, nothing goes unheard, nothing goes without any type of value in your life. Like, even if you're just pushing the cart back to its cart section at a grocery store in the parking lot, you know what I mean? Just doing that makes such a big difference for somebody else, you know what I mean? And having that heart to heart with yourself, I think is just a great way to start being more actionable with your faith, and are actionable with the way that you live your life, and having that true knowing that you can make an impact, you know what I mean? And I think that's a lot of the times people just forget, is like our actions really do matter, our thoughts really do matter, our heart, oh my goodness, our heart matters. And it's like what
Absolutely.
comes in our heart and what comes out of our heart really makes a big effect on our lives and how we see the world. So when did you realize that your relationship with God, or with just a higher power in general, was real for you?
Well, so I grew up in a Muslim household with two very dedicated religious parents. My mom was very knowledgeable in Islam, always reading religious texts. My dad was the embodiment of, living the life of a Muslim in terms of like kindness and generosity, but it was never sort of pushed on me. It was, yes, you are Muslim. We're going to be practicing Muslims, but come into it on your own kind of vibe. So I would say there were actually two life events that brought me closer to my religiosity and spirituality. First being when my first daughter was born, because I felt like the birth of a human being also, what did I have to do with that really? You know what I mean? Like very little if you think about the development of the fetus and everything. And then just being like, I feel like I'm supervising the process, but that's about it. Like her life is in God's hands just as much as mine is. And so that really woke my senses to like, God has asked me to be a mother, right? This is something that not everyone is gifted with. And then the second life event that also put things in perspective was when my father passed away. So if you think about it, life and death, right? The two
Yeah.
things that are constant, right? There's someone's always being born, someone's always leaving. But
Hmm.
what are we actually doing in those situations? How are we handling it? And so both of those life events really caused me to look closely at my relationship with God. How am I actually practicing my religion? How is it shaping my decision making? Um, and how do I want to raise my kid? Was a big
Yeah.
part of that. Because like my parents were great and sort of letting me figure out on my own how I wanted to practice, but I didn't want it to be as open-ended as a mom. I wanted it to be a little bit more spiritual myself. And I remember when I was pregnant, actually, my mom had told me that it was when I was born that she became much more practicing. And so in my head, when I was pregnant, I was thinking, oh, she's going to be born and it's going to be like a switch is going to flip. That's not exactly how it went down. But as she got older and, like I really realized like when you become a parent, that if you want your kids to live up to their potential, you have to also show them how, like, what is it that you want them to prioritize? And so like I have a teenager now and when she's stressing out about a math test, I'm like, is God going to ask you if you got an A on that test? Is how important is this in the grand scheme of things? Not to say that you undervalue your education or don't take it seriously. Do
Yeah.
the best you can, be honest with your efforts, ask for help when you need it, be vulnerable, and be accepting of there's some things that I'm really going to struggle with and ask God for guidance. Pray
Yeah.
on it. You know what I mean? Like, and lose this false sense of control that, like, oh, if I study for 75 hours, I'm going to get that A. You might not get that A. What matters is, are you trying hard? Are you being honest and ethical with your work? And then leave it in God's hand. We have to trust God. We have to trust the process too.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. I love your explanation because one thing that I learned is that when we are given the gift of having children, it's like the gift of knowing how it feels to truly be what God is to us, like our father. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
he's our ultimate like spiritual father in the long run. So it's like he give us this gift to give birth, to have children, and to let go. And you know what I mean? Because we can't control and just contain our children. You know what I mean? Our
Yeah.
our our goal is when we have children is to have that understanding, to have that peace, to have that wisdom, and to have that the patience. I mean, there's certain times as when I'm parenting my sons and I realize like, wow, how good God is because he is so patient with me. You know what I mean? As
Mhm.
I was developing, as I was growing and I was evolving, and that now I can see my children and see where they have their hissy fits and see when they are combative and things like that. When they lose that sense of control, it's like, okay, I have the patience because I have the understanding. And it's like when you talked about like you see them evolve and it's like, what can you really do about that math test? You know what I mean? What can you really
Yeah.
do? You can't really do on it. Just pray on it because it's like we can get so lost in our identity in this world, and
Yeah.
we can feel like, oh, but if I don't do this, then I won't be this. But it's like, okay, but what does God say about you? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I think that's where a lot of people forget is like, does God say you're good already? Then embody it. Does God say you're all loving? Then embody that love. You know what I mean? Share it out. And I love the fact that you talked about praying on it. Oh, I think more people really need to hold on to that because when you pray to God about whatever that's going on internally within you or whatever that's outside of you, that's out of your control, and you just need that sense of direction, that sense of peace, it really gives you that peace of mind that He heard your prayers because you will pray something to God that only you know. You know what I mean? Only you in
Yeah.
your heart will know. And then
Right.
later on, you'll get the answer, you get the confirmation, you get that peace of mind that He heard you because there will be some adjustment that happened. There'll be some type of acknowledgement, like, oh, like let's say for instance, I got in an argument with my husband and he made me so mad. Like I'll go to God with it. I'll pray on it and be like, Lord, he made me so mad and I need this help and I need you to tell him that I'm mad. You know what I mean? Like I need you to
Yeah.
fix him and then he'll go and he'll come back and my husband will come back to me and be like, you know what, Mitzi, I'm sorry. I didn't do this right. You know what I mean? I didn't come at
Yeah.
you the right way. You know what I mean? And it's like the only way that I would know that is from God because I know that I have no control. I can't manipulate anybody on this earth. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's not realistic. So it's just like to know that there's something greater going on in the grand scheme of things is truly beautiful because it makes you realize like I'm not alone on this earth. I'm not
Yeah.
alone in this moment, even in the hardships of life and death. You know what I mean? Because even death can make people realize like what's the point of everything. But then
Yeah.
when then you experience life and then you realize like, oh, it's beautiful. You know what I mean? It's beautiful and all in the whole grand circle of how it can be. So I guess my next question is, what are some misconceptions when it comes to having and owning your religious values?
Well, I think there's a lot, right? There's a lot that's perpetuated by different like sources and media. Like I wasn't visibly Muslim until recently. I wasn't wearing the headscarf. Um, and it was not necessarily like a decision that I made like because I didn't want to look Muslim or be identified as Muslim. But I know a lot of Muslim women that really struggled post 9/11 if they were visibly Muslim. And it's almost like carrying like I had it in my head as like almost people were wearing like a target on their back. Over
Mhm.
time, that evolved into like, this is again just between me and God, right? I'm covering being modest with my speech, with my wardrobe, with everything about me, because that's my relationship with God. No one else needs to understand that. If they
Mhm.
choose to, or if they want to ask questions, I would love to have an educational conversation around it. But for me, the embodiment of my religious values is between me and him. And so I think some of the misconceptions can really weigh on a person because then you feel like you have to explain or you have to justify. Um, and I don't really feel that way anymore. I think I have a friend who recently told me that she also wears a headscarf. Someone went up to her, a non-Muslim, and was like, "Oh, are you covered up because your husband is making you?" And she's like, "I'm not married." And the lady was like, "Oh, right." So it's those kinds of things, like, and I think she was saying that it turned into an educational conversation, and she told her like, why we cover it has nothing to do with like a man telling you to do it. It's like a commandment from God to have modesty, right? And I think I read somewhere there was a story of Muhammad Ali's daughter had said that when her father had explained to her that about like modesty in Islam, the way he conveyed it was like, if there's a piece of candy on the floor and it's not in the wrapper, you're gonna think it's trash, right? Because it's not like covered up. It doesn't seem safe. It's not been guarded by anything. But if there's a candy on the floor and it's in the wrapper, now it has potential. It's safe. And so think of it in the same way. You're covering up for safety because that's what God is commanding you. And so there's a lot of different ways to interpret the modesty within Islam as a woman. And there's other misconceptions out there that can absolutely weigh on Muslims around the world. And some people are equipped to handle it with effective communication skills. Some people are super knowledgeable, so they can shut down those misconceptions very easily. For me, at this point in my journey, I'm coming to the realization that the misconceptions, if they are asked of me, I'm happy to try to clarify or go to a resource and get help in it. But my go-to is not necessarily that it's my job to nullify the misconceptions. God knows what's in my heart. Whatever I'm doing is for God and God alone to strengthen that relationship, and everything else will fall into place, right? We live in an age where information overload, you can easily look up who's doing what and why, right? From a
Yeah.
religious perspective. And the
Hmm.
more you read and the more you learn, you actually realize between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, there's actually more things in common than there are different. So the misconceptions are just a manipulation of information,
Mm.
most likely by people that don't actually understand it.
Yeah, I
And
love
so,
that. I love that. I love the way that you said it because I think it's very clear cut. Like people do not realize the common
commonality.
between yes, thank you. Thank you. It was not coming out.
It was
Okay.
right there.
It was, but just the finishing was not there. So I appreciate that. You got me, girl. But yes, I don't think that people really understand what. they don't know. You know what I mean? And because
Yeah.
they don't know and they don't understand, they're gonna think it's weird, they're gonna think it's taboo, they're gonna just assume. And people don't realize when you assume, you really do make yourself look a little weird. You know what I mean? You make yourself
Hmm.
look like the jerk. You make yourself reveal your ignorance by your assumption.
Absolutely.
Because we all are trying to preserve ourselves in one way or another, but we're just doing it differently. You know what I mean? And we're all trying to express ourselves in a way that we feel free and we feel loved and we feel have all these embodiments, but we just do it differently. And just because you take the modesty differently versus how I take it does not mean that you're better than me or I'm better than you.
Absolutely.
It's about just our commitment to God. And I think that's the thing that people don't realize. It's very personal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
God speaks to us very personal. Like all of our relationship is very personal because the God knows each one of us. You know what I mean? He's created all of us. So it's like, how is he not going
Absolutely.
to know how Sabine works
What's in my
versus how
heart?
Mitzi works? Exactly, because he
Yeah.
knows what's in our hearts. He knows what we're made for and what we can put out into this world. So it's just like, I love the fact that you talked about like if somebody needs the education or they come to me and ask me personally, I'm going to do it. But it's not like you're going to make TikTok videos and just forcing your opinion out on everybody
Yeah.
just to make them feel like, oh, well, you should listen to me because I am a Muslim. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's not the point. The point is not to
Exactly.
separate. The point is to unite by a common God. And that's all that people are really trying to really do in the long run. But it's that displacement of like, oh, but that's not acceptable for me. You know what I mean? Like I can
Yeah.
never do it. But it's like it doesn't matter. It's about just having that understanding and just appreciating it. You don't even have to accept it. You just have to appreciate it for what it is and
Yeah, and not
understand
judge it, like even as from an
exactly.
Islamic standpoint, in my heart, if I was judging you for not being as modest as I am, then me covering up is meaningless because what's in my heart matters more. What's inside of me has to be represented on the outside after the fact, right? If my heart isn't
Exactly.
clean, if my heart isn't connected to God, and I'm judging people, what's the point in even covering up, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm not better than you. I'm just different. And if we can come to terms with being okay with those differences and accepting those differences and learning about each other by way of those differences, that's the beauty that lies in humanity, right? Acceptance and understanding and education.
Yes, yes, because it's like it makes us realize that we have something in common. You know what I mean? Instead of
Yeah.
seeing the division and trying to separate us and trying to put each person in like in a little bubble or in a little box, like, yeah, like why not just realize that we're humans? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're made for something more. And exactly like you said, like what you say, how you portray really reveals your heart. So if you are representing that hate, if you're representing that anger, if you're representing that resentment, is that really representing God? No, because at the end of the day, God is all loving, God is all forgiving, God is all knowing. And at the end of the
Hmm.
day, if we are not representing that, then who really are we? We are of this world, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we really need to check our hearts before coming at people or anything, because even if somebody's coming at you and just they're throwing all their insults at you, how you respond is your choice. And I don't think
Yeah.
people realize like people all have a choice and it's not about competition. It's about just your placement in your world and what you are meant to do in this moment. And if in this moment you are meant to just speak out your truth and speak out what you know and speak your heart, then that is no wrong. And the people who receive it as wrong, well, that's on them. You know what I mean? They have a lot of work that they have to do within them. And I think that's where a lot of the times people feel like, oh, is this even worth even accepting? Or is this even worth even doing anymore? Because I know that after like the Holocaust happened and people were condoned for just even believing in God and claiming that they were Jewish, they were, you know what I mean? A lot of the people actually dismissed it and was like, oh, I'm not no longer going to practice it. Like I've actually worked with a lot of people in their 80s and 90s and they were like, oh, we went through the Holocaust and after that we decided to no longer practice any religion and now we're atheists. You know what I mean? So it's just like
Mhm.
that's a choice that they make, but it's not nothing anyone should just push like on other people. And I think that's where it's like accepting each other's differences is so important because that's where the values come in. You know what I mean? That's where you really
Yeah.
show your religious values is knowing that it doesn't matter what anybody thinks, it's what you're doing in your heart, what you practice, what you do, and what's behind behind closed doors, because what you do behind closed doors and with nobody watching you, that's the impactful moments. Those is what really makes you, mold you, and who you are in one way or another. So yeah,
Right.
I think it really does hold so much value. And it's like because time is catching up to us. And I feel like we can keep diving down this avenue in
Yeah,
so many different ways, really.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, what can be some lasting words that you can leave us off with to keep on thinking?
Um, I think that, if we really want to have a positive life, we have to have a positive mind. And for our heart and mind to not be connected to a higher power makes us really wonder what our purpose is,
Yeah.
and to live a positive, purposeful life, we have to have God as our, number one go-to. Like when you mentioned earlier with your fight with your husband, right? Like how many of us are going to our husband and complaining and then not feeling heard? But when you go to God, you always feel heard, you always feel seen. And I think having that relationship isn't just advantageous to your soul, but even to others. Like when you were mentioning earlier about, like letting people, figure out their own ways and people that have left religion for whatever reason. Like it's not on me to push you to come to Islam, but if I embody what Islam means, you're going to be curious. You're going to be intrigued. You're going to want to learn more. And ultimately, God is the turner of hearts, right? Like
Yeah.
whoever is inclined to have a relationship with him, you walk to him, he runs to you.
Yeah.
And so just keeping God at the forefront and all that we do could really be for the betterment of everyone so that, we can better understand each other and move away from like politicizing religion or weaponizing religion,
Yeah.
especially as we're all watching a genocide play out on our phones. Like, where is everyone's humanity? That wouldn't be a question we're asking if God was at the forefront, if there was accountability, that I am answerable to God for my actions, for what I
Mm.
do and how I treat people.
Oh,
And so
absolutely.
we all just have to make God our number one and then watch how things get better and better.
Exactly. I think that's holds so much value. It's just watching ourselves and our hearts and checking that first before checking other people. Because people can be so quick to like, oh, but you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't eat that. You shouldn't dress like this. You know what I mean? But it's
Yeah,
like, well, who are you to judge me when I am the one that's supposed to be controlling my own self? You know what I mean? And
right.
I think that's a lot of times a lot of people don't have is that self accountability that
Hmm.
that they don't even account for their own actions and they just go with the wind with wherever direction it goes and they'll go there too. And it's like we need to
Yeah,
have that stance of believing in something more than ourselves and believing in
absolutely.
something greater and then truly embodying it like you said because it's like if we really cared about what's going on across the earth or across just the streets or just in your even hometown then
Yeah,
you would show that in a way you would represent that in a way it doesn't matter if they're black white Asian you know what I mean it doesn't matter
right.
about
Doesn't matter.
whatever label that a person wants to identify themselves as it's about just do you have that empathy in that heart? Do you have that care in your heart? Do you really love in a way that's sincere? That even if somebody else may not recognize it, somebody will recognize it and you'll recognize it that it's coming from a pure place. And I think that's a lot of times people don't even realize is like having that pureness within them because they don't even recognize it, you know? So it's truly heartening to know that there's so many people out there in this world that just
There's
don't
no
even understand.
accountability, right? The
Yeah.
purity of your heart is a reflection of how connected to God your heart is.
Mm-hmm.
It's capable of so much. God has created us with so much love,
Yeah.
so much ability to give. But
Yeah.
are we leaning into our God-given,
Mm.
attributes? Are we attributing those gifts back to him, right?
Yeah.
Like us having this conversation right now,
Yeah.
God put us here. God
Yes.
has made us capable,
Yes.
right? Like we can obviously there's a gratitude that I have for you for giving me the opportunity, but ultimately, like thank you, God, for
God.
putting
Yeah.
this opportunity in my life, for letting me be a vessel of information. Maybe someone listening out there will be like, oh, what she's saying makes sense. Even though I'm not Muslim, I get what she's saying, right? And like
Yeah.
that's the pathway to connection
Yes.
within the context of like God consciousness that we are all capable of. It's a matter of opening doors and opening hearts because God wants that to happen.
Exactly. And it just shows how real and how active and how alive God really is to really connect us from two different places of the world or different
Yeah.
places of the wherever that we are standing in. And knowing that at the end of the day, it gives God glory. And that's what people need to realize. Like, are you allowing the things to come to you and are you taking it in? I mean, is it for your own
Mm,
self or are you giving it back to God because you know that He's the one that provided it to you? So yes,
absolutely.
I most definitely understand with what you're saying. So thank you so much, ladies, and thank you so much for allowing this conversation to be. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this conversation and I hope you continue on thinking. Bye.